This is a conversation with Pawan Bareja. Hi, Pawan.
Hi, Sergi.
So, how did you get to SE?
Well, I was in the business world, and I was working in the business world and getting very tired of working. And I thought that, I wanted to do some healing work. So I started researching what are my options. And then I came upon Peter's book, and I read that, and it just really made a big difference for me. And I said, okay, this is what I want to learn. I want to be able to practice this. And I found the SE trainings. And since the SE trainings were just a few times in a year, I could actually hold on to my day job and take the training. So I found Raja, and he was teaching in Pasadena, and I was living in San Francisco. So I flew out, took a class with him, completely fell in love with Raja and his teachings, and stayed with SE since then.
So there's something really that resonated with you about it. So can you say a little bit about, where the resonance was?
Yeah, the resonance was so much as in my animal body. I just felt my animal body unwinding, and I cannot remember the specifics, but I was in Brazil when I was reading this book, and I still remember, I had movements come, and I had shaking, and I had releases happening in my body. So I was, I was affected. I said, well, if reading a book can have this effect on me and have this unwinding in me in such an innate manner that my body is unwinding, I said, well, I just have to explore this.
Yeah, so that experience of something in your body that, as you're reading the book, you just notice how it's unwinding. And so the experience of these forces, this energy in your body.
Yes. And I could not put words to it. I could not name it. Exactly, it's as if that animal in me said, yes, you're finally listening to me, and you're finally, allowing me to come out. And it speaks a different language. It's not English, and it's not Hindi. And it just has its own language. And that animal in me could speak, finally. It had an expression.
So it feels very beautiful as I'm listening to you. That sense of the animal in you that finally can speak and can have its expression in its own language.
Yes.
And that, it can be heard.
Yes. I feel that there is a level of intuitive work that is, that's done in SE. And it's very non-linear, non-verbal. It's more in resonance. It's more animal to animal. And it's, the social structure that we place on from our society, from our conditioning, it just falls away. And this aspect of ourselves comes out. It's natural, it's innate. And that's what happens, I feel, in SE.
Yeah. So these other things, social, that fall away, that they block, and there's something about then the animal-to-animal resonance.
Yes.
Yeah. And go ahead.
And that just brings to mind some of the sessions that I saw in the, when I went to study with Raja. I just saw the way he would do the demonstrations. He would teach certain material, but then when he's doing the demonstration, the space, the container would be different. The space changed. And so, that was very powerful for me to experience that, to be present, to see other people being authentic as they experience their own healing, their own process. So I was very touched by that.
So that sense of the space changes. So in a way, how some people can describe in a religious setting how, the quality of the space changes, it becomes sacred space, it's no longer ordinary reality, but something that you experience that even with the same person, the same cast of characters, there is Raja giving a lecture, and then the same cast of character, the demo takes place, and then the quality, you have that sense of the quality of the space changing.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and I'm not surprised that Raja then started doing his day-longs at Spirit Rock would be about spirituality and trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the first day-longs. Because already, when you do the SE session, when you see an SE session demonstration, there is spirituality in expression.
Mm-hmm.
Something very spiritual is happening. We can't, name it in that terms. But I feel there's such deep innate healing happening,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so what you're describing, and the way you're describing it, as we've been talking, is really, you're describing the experience of sensing, the sensing the animal inside, the sensing the atmosphere, the sensing of the communication that happens. So, all of the conversation we're having is very much into that mode of sensing and of trying to transmit the experience of sensing.
Yes, yes, yes. And how it's beautiful how in this sensing there is all of the elements of Saibam. So it's sensation, image, behavior, affect, and meaning or memory. All of those, it's kind of like an accordion. You kind of like go and pick one and bring that into the sensing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that becomes what the organism, the two organisms are sensing between them. And then to have the container of the teaching class, the teaching group holding that container, it's very powerful, the dynamics of that container between, the practitioner and the recipient and the students around. That whole container, the whole dynamic. I have seen such beautiful sessions, such beautiful healing happen. Such shifts happen in that space. And I feel that bringing in all of these Saibam elements, and then sometimes, even in just the sensing, such deep attachment work is being done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And sometimes there is pre-verbal, prenatal trauma that's being worked through. And so, there is all of these different layers. I still remember there was one session where there was some kind of work that was done, and at the end when they had the deconstruction, they were working through something in the past life. But how would you name something like that? Because they were both in the midst of it and they could not really name it. But once at the end of the session and they started deconstructing, it was that far back.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And of course, there is no scientific proof. You can't really run an experiment. But at the same time, I feel that the knot within the recipient of the SE session, when that knot releases, and they come back after 6 months or a year and they report, how it has changed for them. That certain place that they were stuck at, now they're able to move through.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That, I think, is the beauty. It's, that's the beauty of the SE session.
Yes, yes. And so
as
I'm hearing you talk about this, the sense I have is the sense of a certain kind of attention that's being paid to the situation. So there's a container, but there's also the richness of all the sensation of all the Saibam, all these aspects. And there is a quality of, in a way, the attention being there, and being brought, so that what's happening is there is a healing that goes, beyond. It's a sense, of a warmth, of a lightening, of a that transforms the situation.
Yes, and there's also a sense of there is a joining that happens. Mm-hmm. So it's like the SE practitioner and the recipient, the client, there is that joining that happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in that joining, in that resonance, there is some, and, along with the container, some healing occurs for the recipient of the session. And sometimes it would be that, you have, a demo session in a class, and then, I've been an assistant for so many years, and I would hear some of the students say that seeing that demo, it was almost like they were being worked on, and some aspect of themselves got transformed.
Yeah. So something is happening in that space.
Yes.
That touches people through the resonance.
Through the resonance, yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel that, in the SE session, in the SE training, we don't speak. We don't give a formal teaching around resonance, though it's used so much. When you see Peter working, Peter is working a lot with the resonance. He's using his observation. But sometimes, how when Peter works, he's catching things like he's 2 steps ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that I feel comes from a very subtle level of joining that he's doing also. Because I have spoken to some students who have worked with Peter. So after the sessions, or after a few years of having worked with him, they've spoken about how there is the way they are held in that session. And it's almost as if it's just them and Peter, and there's nobody else around. And there is he does a certain joining, he does a certain way in which he does his resonance, where he's capturing information. He's like he's hearing things and picking up things before they land, so it's like it's coming and he's catching it ahead of time. And he's like, oh, this one is going to land. And then he can choose, I can go in this direction, or I can choose, he goes in a different direction.
So, your image of catching it before it lands, there's something visually that almost, if I imagine that, there's somebody throwing a ball, and as I see the ball starting its arc, in a way my mind complete the ... of where it's going to be at all these points. So that I have the possibility of positioning myself with plenty of time to catch it. I'm not surprised by it. And so that harmony of being with it, instead of in a way the reactive mode of, oh my God, where is it going to land? And I have to run after it. So it feels like very much that sense of harmony as opposed to reactive.
I agree. And the additional piece I want to add to that, Serge, is that it's almost like I'm throwing 10 balls towards you. And you see the trajectory of each one of them. And then what Peter does is he'll kind of like position so that he catches maybe 2 of them to the left, because he doesn't want to go in the right towards the balls that are landing on the right. So he'll go in that particular place and position himself so he catches, and then he can take it to because it's going in a certain direction.
Right.
Which is where I feel the intervention aspect comes in. There is, SE is not just about letting a client float. There is a slight bit of intervention, because there is all of this information that's coming at you. What is it you're going to choose out of this information? And then you have a certain path you're taking them
Yes.
You're taking the client.
And so what you're describing with the image of the 10 balls and of choosing which ones is a sense that in that moment, as the therapist, you're not in a place of being overwhelmed by these 10 balls or of ignoring them, but the time is slowing down and of seeing them and of feeling so at ease, with where you are, that you have the possibility of choosing which one you pick up.
Yes.
And so there's that aspect of actually at that moment the time is slowing down.
Yes.
And that is related to what you were talking about before, about a certain quality of the space. Because as the therapist is actually in that place of comfort, of seeing what's happening, and of having a sense of having time and a deliberate choice, then you're experiencing that space where actually the pressure of reactivity is really much less.
Much less. Because you're really present.
Mm-hmm.
You're really present in a non-judgmental, centered way.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you're present and the more you're in your own body, then as you see these different aspects of the client, here are like these 10 different aspects and I could choose which one. There are some that you let go of because right now the psyche of the client is not yet ready to go into that, And then you pick the ones which will take them to the next level. So, but the quality is, as a practitioner, you're really present, you're centered, and not judging your own self or the client. Mm-hmm. Because I feel if you have self-judgment, that also gets in the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It takes energy to judge your own self.
Right. So, and as we again described the paradigm of the 10 balls coming at you, in order to be able to slow down the time and to respond to it, you obviously can't waste too much of your energy and attention going into the dialogue with the inner critic, and you really need to be present to function.
Yes, that is true. Yes. Yeah.
So when you're describing things this way, obviously it feels like a very strong presence, observation of the qualities of mindfulness, which is something that has been another long-standing interest of yours.
Yes. I feel without the mindfulness practice, I just couldn't be doing SE. And while I was taking my training, I was very lucky to have one of the people in the training. He was a long-term mindfulness practitioner. So he and I, we would have several conversations as we learned more of SE. We were like, isn't this similar to mindfulness? Mm-hmm. And we would have conversations about how is it different and how is it similar? Because if you take secular mindfulness, a lot of things in SE are basically secular mindfulness. But SE is different from secular mindfulness in that it actually takes your attention in a certain direction. So the pendulation that it does between the trauma and the healing vortex, which I know now we call them the red and the blue vortex, but that pendulation is very specific and unique to SE. While in secular mindfulness, you have, open-ended, whatever is your predominant experience, you bring your mindfulness to that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what you're saying is that the difference between mindfulness or secular mindfulness and SE is that SE has a focus.
Yes, SE has a focus.
And the focus is about that specific practice that's going to be this pendulation, so that practicing, in a way, you don't practice, the observing and letting go, but you practice, your focus is the practice of the pendulation.
Yes. And where I feel mindfulness adds an additional dimension to SE is, as you know, now, you know, some of the teachers at Spirit Rock, especially Philip Moffitt, now he uses the word compassionate mindfulness. Jack Cornfield now calls it loving attention or loving mindfulness, loving awareness. That's the word he uses. So that aspect of warmth and compassion, that is an additional piece which I feel is an essential piece in the healing. Because without the heart aspect, as we say in mindfulness, without the warmth of the heart, mindfulness itself becomes very dry. So mindfulness alone, you can take an example like, you know, like a barcode reader in a grocery store is very mindful. That machine, because it's reading exactly, you know, milk, $2.59, you know, chips, $1.39. So it reads everything very mindfully.
Right.
But it does not have the warmth. It does not feel the taste of milk. So I'm using this example from Philip Moffitt when he gives the example of what's the difference between just mindfulness versus compassionate mindfulness.
Yes.
Right? So it becomes very dry if you're just with mindfulness. So bringing in the compassion, it adds a certain juice to mindfulness. It brings it alive.
Yeah.
It has the warmth of the heart. And so that is the additional piece which mindfulness brings in, as in, you know, Vipassana meditation practice. That brings in, and that's the additional piece which I feel it adds to SE. Because any kind of healing, if you look at any wound, you know, if a child comes crying to you and you hold the child, well, holding the child in your arms is not really healing the wound or, you know, the scraped knee of the child. But it's the warmth of your heart. That's what's the healing for the child. Similarly, when you bring in the warmth of mindfulness with compassion practices, loving kindness practices, that is the additional piece. When I bring in that into my work, doing the SE work, I feel huge healing happens.
And
for the client themselves to practice those practices is very powerful.
Yeah. And so when I hear you say this, also I relate it to what you were talking about earlier, and how beautiful it is to feel resonance during the healing. Because resonance is actually that part where it's not just a machine, but there is another human being is being touched by this experience and is sharing it and living it. So you are, the environment is one of that shared experience at the level of compassion, basically.
Yes. And you know, with the mindfulness practice, what that does is when you marry mindfulness with SE, then how do you open your heart and be present for some really deep woundedness in your client and have a balance? So that's where, you know, in mindfulness we have the equanimity practice. So that helps when I'm working with a client. That helps me when I'm, you know, not only in seeing the difficult in the client and holding that, but the client themselves, how do they look back on their own past and face that huge trauma that they've been through, as maybe there is a developmental trauma. But how do you look at that and not be washed away by the grief, by the sorrow of that lost childhood? That's where, you know, having some compassion for your own self, having an equanimity practice, that is helpful to a client as well in dealing with their own trauma.
So that there is actually a container. where
Yes.
this thing can fit instead of
Yes.
being overwhelming to everybody.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that sense, when you're talking about something like the equanimity practice, it's, if you think of it, something that's not maybe as an analogy with the pendulation, with going into the difficult situation, being able to bear it more and more, so that you develop the capacity to have a container for it. And you can then bring it to the situation where you're coming with the client and there is something really big, but you have developed that container.
Yes. Yes. You develop the container. Yes. And, I also think about it as in the energy wells that we study in the advanced SC training, where you go through the energy well and then you kind of as you go through the pendulation at one level, then you go into a deeper level. And it may be the same incident from the childhood, but now you hit deeper layers of maybe the grief or the sadness. So as you come upon these deeper layers, the initial pendulation has actually built some of that equanimity within you to handle. But then when you hit a deeper vein of this grief or sadness, you may, again, fall into a lot of crying or grief. And, if too much of the emotion comes up, we know that you might kind of pendulate and swing back into the smaller container, right? Smaller well. But that's where, having some of the equanimity practice as you go into deeper layers, come upon deeper pain, that is helpful so that a person can stay in that space. And, having some compassion and loving kindness for your own self, that is helpful in building that equanimity.
Yes. And
because it's hard to see your own sadness and, be balanced about it.
Yeah. No,
So
that's what you're talking about is literally, and I like your image, and I'm watching you do it, and so I want to describe what I'm watching you do so that people who don't see you and just hear you can have it. But you're doing the hand movement of the well that just starts as maybe just like a little puddle, so it's pretty flat, and then the hand goes and does a deeper movement, so it's like you're sinking into a deeper layer. And then, again, and as your hand pendulates back and forth, it goes deeper and deeper. And and so that visual of, the pendulating, but it's not just the pendulating at the same level, but going deeper and deeper into a deeper well. And what you're describing then is building over time, the ability to increase resilience. So, and the making the connection between the practice and that practice actually is going to build resilience, and that building that resilience is like building a larger container for yourself as well as for patients.
Yes. Yeah. That's beautifully described, yes.
Thank you, Pawan. This recording is part of the Somatic Mindfulness and Relational Psychotherapy podcast. See the website relationalimplicit.com.